New York City's recorded history began long before the rise of its towering skyline and bustling streets. For thousands of years, the land that would eventually become New York was inhabited by indigenous peoples. Most notably, the Lenape, an Algonquian-speaking group who lived across the forests, rivers, and coastal areas surrounding present-day Manhattan. They hunted, fished, farmed, and traded throughout the region, living in relative harmony with the natural environment for nearly 8,000 years before the arrival of Europeans. The first European known to enter New York Harbor was the Italian explorer Giovanni da Verrazzano in 1524, sailing on behalf of France. Although he claimed the area for the French crown, no permanent settlement followed. Nearly a century later, in 1609, the English explorer Henry Hudson, working for the Dutch East India Company, sailed into the harbor while searching for a northwest passage to Asia. He explored the river that now bears his name and claimed the surrounding lands for the Dutch Republic, laying the foundations for Dutch colonization in the region. Over the following years, Dutch traders established a series of trading posts throughout the Hudson Valley and along the Atlantic coast as part of the colony of New Netherland. In 1624, the Dutch West India Company sent settlers to establish permanent communities. A small settlement was founded on the southern tip of Manhattan Island, where Fort Amsterdam was constructed in 1625 to protect the entrance to the Hudson River and secure the profitable fur trade. Around the fort grew the town of New Amsterdam, the direct ancestor of modern New York City. In 1626, the colony's Director General, Peter Minuit, famously purchased Manhattan from local Lenape inhabitants in exchange for trade goods valued at around 60 guilders. Under later governors such as Peter Stuyvesant, the settlement expanded steadily, reaching around 1,500 inhabitants by 1655. However, Stuyvesant's strict policies, including religious restrictions and attempts to tightly regulate colonial life, made him unpopular among many settlers. During the 17th century, the Dutch Republic and England became fierce commercial and naval rivals. Amid the Anglo-Dutch Wars, the settlers of New Amsterdam built a defensive wall in 1653 along the northern edge of the settlement to guard against possible English attack. That wall later gave its name to present-day Wall Street. Despite these efforts, an English fleet arrived in 1664 and demanded the colony's surrender. Unable to mount an effective defense, Stuyvesant handed over New Amsterdam without a fight. The English renamed the colony New York in honor of the Duke of York, the future King James II. Under English rule, New York prospered as a growing center of trade and immigration. Dutch influence, nevertheless, remained deeply embedded in the city's culture, laws, and architecture. Slavery also became an increasingly important part of New York's economy. By the mid-18th century, roughly one-fifth of the city's population consisted of enslaved Africans, many of whom worked in households, docks, construction, and commerce. As tensions between Britain and the American colonies increased during the 18th century, New York emerged as a major political center. Organizations such as the Sons of Liberty mobilized resistance against British taxation policies, while the Stamp Act Congress of 1765 convened in the city to coordinate colonial opposition to British rule. During the American Revolution, New York became strategically vital. Following the Battle of Long Island in 1776, British forces captured the city, which remained under British occupation for most of the war. Only after the Treaty of Paris in 1783 did British troops evacuate the city. In 1785, New York briefly became the capital of the newly independent United States. Important early national events took place there, including the inauguration of George Washington at Federal Hall in 1789. During this period, Wall Street also began developing into a financial center. Institutions such as the Bank of New York and later the New York Stock Exchange established the foundations for the city's future economic dominance. The 19th century transformed New York dramatically. The completion of the Erie Canal in 1825 connected the Hudson River to the Great Lakes, turning New York into the nation's leading port and commercial gateway. Waves of immigrants from Ireland, Germany, Italy, Eastern Europe, and China flooded into the city seeking opportunity. Between 1800 and the mid-1800s, the population exploded from around 60,000 people to over 500,000. Neighborhoods, such as the Lower East Side, became crowded immigrant districts filled with tenement housing, markets, and workshops. While immigration fueled economic growth and cultural diversity, it also brought severe overcrowding, poverty, disease outbreaks, and crime. Cholera epidemics swept through the city several times during the 19th century, while neighborhoods such as Five Points became notorious for gang violence and desperate living conditions. Despite these hardships, New York also emerged as America's cultural capital. Landmarks and institutions such as Central Park, the Brooklyn Bridge, the New York Public Library, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art helped define the city's growing prestige. Journalism flourished, with newspapers like the New York Times becoming nationally influential. One of the city's most iconic symbols arrived in 1886 when France gifted the Statue of Liberty to the United States. Standing in New York Harbor, it welcomed millions of immigrants arriving through Ellis Island during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The early 20th century witnessed another transformation as New York's skyline rose dramatically. New engineering techniques allowed for the construction of skyscrapers such as the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building. Meanwhile, the subway system, which opened in 1904, unified the growing metropolis and accelerated expansion across Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. During the Roaring '20s, New York became synonymous with jazz, nightlife, and modern culture. Even during Prohibition, thousands of illegal speakeasies operated throughout the city. However, prosperity collapsed after the Wall Street crash of 1929 triggered the Great Depression. Unemployment soared, poverty spread, and many New Yorkers struggled to survive. World War II helped revive the city's economy as factories and ports became essential to the Allied war effort. After the war, New York entered a new era of global influence. The city became home to the United Nations headquarters in 1952 and increasingly emerged as a global center of finance, media, art, and fashion. The later 20th century brought both prosperity and crisis. During the 1970s, New York faced severe crime, economic decline, and urban decay. Yet through investment, redevelopment, and cultural reinvention, the city recovered once again. Modern landmarks, such as the World Trade Center, symbolize the city's ambition and economic strength before their destruction during the September 11th attacks in 2001. Today, New York City remains one of the most influential urban centers in the world. Built through centuries of immigration, trade, conflict, innovation, and reinvention, it has evolved from a small Dutch trading outpost into a vast global metropolis known for its financial power, cultural influence, diversity, and resilience.